Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gotama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program. I'm going to be sharing with you the Eightfold Path. This is the path for all humans to enlightenment. We've been building up to this through our class last week where we had the Four Noble Truths. That's the very beginning of the Eightfold Path. Now we're going to go into the rest of the Eightfold Path, making sure that you guys understand that so that you can practice it. Because that's where the real results come in when you're actually making your way to enlightenment and getting to that peaceful and joyful mental state. It's through practicing the Eightfold Path in daily life. There's a certain amount of intellectual learning that you need to do in reflection to independently verify it, but you need to be able to integrate it into your day-to-day life. So that's why here at the beginning of the group learning program, I've already taught it in 3 separate classes, and now I'm going to teach it to you again to be sure that you have a refresh and you have an opportunity to gain any clarifying questions that you need so that you can have the answers to those and integrate it into your day-to-day life, because that's where you're going to start seeing the real transformation to your mind and your life and all your relationships. So welcome to all of you, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. The way that we start each one of our classes is with a meditation. So I'm going to guide you in a meditation session first, and then afterwards, that's when we'll move into discussing the Eightfold Path. And I'll be opening up to questions that you guys have along the way. So if you'd like to join for meditation, you can take whatever position you like. The Buddha taught seated, lying, standing, and walking. And all of these except walking tend to work out really well for online learning. I'm going to start with the chanting, which you guys are welcome to join in on. And then I'm going to come in with the guidance. There'll be that period of time where it's just quiet. And then we'll come out of that with some more chanting. And that's where I'll start today's class. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanang Abhivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Dhammo Dhammang namasami Supatipano bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Iti piso bhagava Arahang Samma Sambuddho Vicacaranang sammuno Sakato rokavitu Anutero purisa Dhamma sati sata tawa manusrang Poto Bhagavati. Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, and the upper body erect. Just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. Not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose, experiencing the full breath. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start focusing the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. อะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธมะคะวาโพตังมะคะวันหังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตมะคะวัตตาธัมโมดามังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาดามาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Once again, welcome to everyone. Nice to see everyone in class today, whether you're joining in Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Welcome to everyone. Maybe you're even listening to this on the replay through YouTube or our podcast. Welcome to everyone, because today's class is all about helping you to understand the Eightfold Path, the path for all humans to enlightenment. This is a teaching that you're going to need to become intimately familiar with. Depending on how frequently you've studied this, you might have this memorized to a certain degree. If you don't yet have it memorized, that's something that you would like to work towards. That's why I taught it at the very beginning of the program, where I took 3 individual classes to go through each of the 3 sections. And then now, over these last 2 classes, last week and today, we're learning the Eightfold Path again, because you really need to commit this to your memory. If you're learning in class, that's excellent. If you're doing some study outside of class, that's really wonderful, because it's going to help you to commit it to your memory. You're going to need to know this inside and out, backwards and forwards, and then gradually work at it to implement it into your day-to-day life. Because the Eightfold Path is 8 individual factors that when you dial this in closer and closer to your life, that's where you're going to see the improvement to the condition of your mind and to your life. Your relationships are really going to be blossoming by the time you fully implement this and you're starting to experience the improvements here. That what this is you can think of it almost like if you had a speaker system and there were 8 individual dials and you were tweaking those individual dials to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. That's what you're doing with this Eightfold Path, is you need to tweak it and tweak it and tweak it and tweak it. You're not going to be able to learn it once and then just implement it and be perfect at it. It's going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress that leads to improvement in your day-to-day life and in your mind and in your relationships. So one of the biggest myths that people have about the life story of the Buddha is they think he sat under a tree, he meditated, and instantly got to enlightenment. Well, meditation is part of the path to enlightenment. It's part of this this Eightfold Path, but there's many other factors as well. If you were just meditating and that's it, you would never actually get to enlightenment. So you're going to need the wisdom around this path. And when you're learning this, it's important that you don't believe these teachings, just like I share with you guys typically, because you need to be able to see the truth for yourself through learning, examining, and investigating, through reflecting to independently verify, and then through practicing, integrating the teachings into your day-to-day life. Because when you fully implement this, that's where you're going to start experiencing significant improvements in your mind and in your life. You can experience improvements on the path. I've had students say even in just 2 short days, they've seen improvements to what they're experiencing. But if you really are interested in long-term improvements to really experience that, that's where this Eightfold Path comes in, where you'll ultimately eliminate all those discontent feelings. You'll notice the peace and the calmness, the serenity and contentedness with joy. You'll notice all those discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others are completely eliminated. Your personal, professional relationships are really blossoming, and you'll notice the focus, concentration, clarity, and deep memory starting to come into the mind more and more, to the point where you're not even in a bad mood any longer. All of the teachings of the Buddha are based on this foundation of right view. That's the real foundation. And that's what we spent our time last week talking about and helping you guys to be able to independently verify this. Because what right view is the Four Noble Truths. You can see this in the words of the Buddha. These are the original words of the Buddha. And as you're studying his teachings, you would always like to be using his original words. If you're not studying with his original words, then you wouldn't actually know what he did teach and what he didn't teach. So this is what he taught on right view. He says, in what, monks, is right view? It is, monks, the wisdom of discontentedness, the wisdom of the cause of discontentedness, the wisdom of the elimination of discontentedness, and the wisdom of the way of practice leading to the elimination of discontentedness. This is called right view. So the Eightfold Path is a core central teaching where all of his other teachings are plugging into it. So here in the Eightfold Path, he's pointing to another teaching and saying that's right view. He's pointing to the Four Noble Truths, helping you to understand that that's what he considers to be right view. Underneath of this line here, I have the top section of the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths goes on beyond this. And if you've been reading the book, you will have seen the entire Four Noble Truths in chapter 4, based in the original words of the Buddha. But here, for our visual aid, I just have the top section of that so that you can see the connection between the Eightfold Path and the Four Noble Truths, gaining confidence that yes, what the Buddha is doing here is he's pointing to the Four Noble Truths. And then you would go learn the Four Noble Truths. And that's where last week I first introduced you into the Three Universal Truths as building blocks to help you understand the Four Noble Truths, that you were able to learn, reflect, and understand what the universal truth of impermanence is, how things are constantly changing in the world. Then we talked about the universal truth of discontentedness, how the unenlightened mind experiences conditioned feelings, pleasant feelings, painful feelings, and neither painful nor pleasant. And these are based on some condition. If it's sunny outside, you might get happy and excited. But then when it's raining, you'll get sad or frustrated perhaps. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing. Or if your bank account balance is up here, you might get really happy. But then when it goes down, you might get sad or frustrated. These are conditioned feelings. This is the problem that the Buddha discovered in the mind. And we talked about the universal truth of non-self, how the mind has this personal existence view where it wants to be perceived by others in a certain way. So it'll cling to your self-image and your self-identity, wanting other people to perceive you in a certain way. And then you can only feel comfortable when you're being perceived that way. And I walk you through this in a way that you could learn it and you could independently verify all three of these. And then I helped you to understand craving, desire, attachment, wants, and expectations, the way the mind is longing, yearning, and pulling towards the objects of its affection, trying to gain satisfaction from something externally. It's like the mind thinks the next new shiny object waiting around the corner is going to provide some lasting satisfaction. So it chases and chases and chases and chases. The mind's longing, yearning is actually what's causing its discontentedness. In the First Noble Truth, the Buddha is explaining the problem that Every unenlightened being is experiencing discontentedness. The mind's going up and down and up and down and up and down, where you get happy and excited for a while, but then you get sad or frustrated, then you get lonely and bored, then you feel guilt or shame or fear or some other discontent feeling. Of course, there's going to be peacefulness and calm here and there in the middle of those things, but it's only a matter of time before you become frustrated or agitated in the unenlightened state. This is the problem. Then the cause of that problem is craving, desire, attachment, the longing, the yearning, wanting things to be a certain way. The craving, desire, attachment isn't the object itself. It's the way that the mind longs and yearns for it, thinking that it's going to provide some kind of lasting satisfaction. So if you were in the mall and you saw a brand new pair of shoes and you were longing and yearning for them, the craving, desire, attachment isn't the shoes. It's the way the mind's longing, yearning for it. And what the mind's doing is it's craving permanence. It's wanting and expecting things to be a certain way. But it lives in an impermanent world. That's why it's important to understand the universal truth of impermanence. Because if you go into the shoe store and you're so excited to get those shoes and they have your size, you'll be happy. You'll be so excited. You can't wait to get to work on Monday or go to school or wherever it is in order to be able to have people see your shoes. Oh man, this is going to be great. I got these new shoes, right? But if you go into the store and they don't have your size, you'll be frustrated or agitated or annoyed if you have a craving, desire, attachment, if the mind's longing and yearning because it's craving things to be a certain way. Or if you've had a boyfriend or girlfriend and you guys break up, you might be lonely or bored. That's the mind craving permanence, wanting this person to be permanent in your life. We also talked about the example of like if you had a brand new car and it got scratched, you might be angry or frustrated if you were craving this car to be permanently beautiful. And the mind here just isn't understanding that it's having this craving, desire, attachment, that the mind is longing, yearning, and wanting things to be permanent. It's not the scratch or the person who scratched your car that's causing those discontent feelings. It's the mind longing, yearning. When you got the car, you were so happy and excited, but then when you saw the scratch, the mind gets frustrated or agitated or annoyed. And that's the mind experiencing discontentedness due to the craving, desire, attachment, wanting things to be permanent. So one way to say this is the mind craves permanence. Another way to say this is that the mind doesn't like impermanence. It doesn't like change, right? If you look at your life and all the situations where you've experienced the most change, those were some of the most difficult times for yourself. Even when you were making those decisions, right? You were maybe deciding to change jobs, maybe change living locations, changing relationships, things like this. When you were experiencing a lot of change in your life, that's where the mind was struggling and having the most difficulties. So you can independently verify this second noble truth through looking at recent times when you've been frustrated or angry or irritated, and you can see that it's your mind craving permanence, that if you would have got what you wanted, you would have been happy or excited. But because you didn't get what you wanted, you got angry or sad or frustrated or some other discontent feeling. And this is very empowering, where you can have a real breakthrough to being able to see that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings. Because what the mind does in the unenlightened state, when it doesn't understand the second noble truth, is it pushes people away or pushes a situation away. Maybe friends or family, you've pushed those people away thinking that that's going to solve the problem. But you can see it doesn't, because your mind still gets frustrated or angry or irritated. If they were the true cause of your problem, then you would be peaceful when you push them out of your life. Or you might be bitter and harsh and hostile to people through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. Or you might put your expectations on people and try to control them or force them to do things a certain way. And people might be doing this to you too, right? Because their mind doesn't understand this wisdom of the second noble truth too. So what the mind does with this lack of wisdom is it goes around believing that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated. But when you have this breakthrough to understanding that it's the craving, desire, attachment that is causing these feelings, then the third noble truth starts to make a lot of sense to you. Because if the cause of discontentedness, craving, desire, attachment, then the elimination of discontentedness is to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. If you eliminate that cause, then you will eliminate the effect, right? So you can basically opt out of experiencing anger and sadness and frustration, all these discontent feelings like stress and anxiety. You can opt out of that by training your mind to eliminate craving, desire, attachment. And then the way to do that is in the fourth noble truth. The path to eliminating discontentedness is the Eightfold Path. That's the complete perfect plan that's going to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment, the mind longing, yearning, and wanting things to be a certain way. So that's why we're now going to spend time to go through the Eightfold Path and make sure you understand it, because it all starts with this right view. And then you're going to need to know all these other factors. So right view is to understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, that it's craving, desire, attachment. If you go around blaming other people for what you're experiencing, you'll never eliminate your anger and frustration, because you're not looking at the true problem and the true cause of the problem. When you have wrong view, you'll blame other people for the feelings that you experience. So what you would like to do is, whenever your mind's angry or frustrated or experiencing any kind of discontentedness whatsoever, is look inward to try to figure out what is it that the mind's longing, yearning, what is it craving for? Because when you start looking inward and being introspective, now you can discover your cravings, desires, attachments. There's some wants or expectations that the mind has. So you need to learn how to do that and uncover those so that now you can skillfully eliminate them through training the mind. So once you understand what right view is that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, now we can build upon that to understand right intention. These are the words of the Buddha on right intention. He says, in what, monks, is right intention? The intention of renunciation, the intention of non-ill will, the intention of harmlessness. This, monks, is called right intention. So here, some people translate this as right thinking or right thought, because you need to develop this thinking or this intention or this thought of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false beliefs, your false opinions, your false views, and your unwholesomeness. There's a certain amount of unwholesome moral conduct that each unenlightened being has. And as long as you're putting that out, it's going to just produce harm, and then harm's going to come back to you. So you need to be willing to let go of these things. You need to have an open mind, but you're not letting go of your false beliefs, opinions, and views by bringing in new beliefs or new opinions or new views. Instead, you're bringing in wisdom, that when you're learning and practicing the teachings of the Buddha, you're independently verifying that they're true, and you can see the truth and the wisdom in his teachings, and you're seeing that it conflicts with your beliefs. You're like, whoa, let me get rid of these beliefs. These things aren't serving me well at all, right? So now you have wisdom of what truly is transpiring in the world. One of the very first beliefs that you need to eliminate, one of those false beliefs, opinions, and views, is that other people are causing you to be angry or frustrated or irritated. You need to be willing to let that go. If you hold on to that belief, you'll never be able to get to the point where you've eliminated your discontent feelings, because you'll just keep pushing people away, being bitter, harsh, and hostile, and putting your expectations on people, trying to change other people to do things your way. So this renunciation is really important here as the second factor of the Eightfold Path, that you're willing to let go of your false beliefs, opinions, your views, your misunderstandings, your misperceptions, and the unwholesome moral conduct. You also need to have the intention of non-ill will or goodwill, the intention of having loving kindness towards all beings. Ill will is like animosity and bitterness, anger, hatred, and ill will. And when you have this anger, this frustration, this agitation, this annoyance towards others, this is going to produce unskillful conduct. So you would like to have your intentions be with goodwill, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards other people. Right now, you probably like certain people because they're meeting your expectations. They're doing the things you want them to do. But there's certain people that you dislike because they're not meeting your expectations. They're not doing what you want them to do. This is all coming from the mind's craving, desire, attachment. But when you eliminate all of this, you can get to the point where you have love and kindness for all beings. And part of that transformation is having the intention of non-ill will or goodwill towards all beings, and the intention of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. Because any harm that you put out it's just going to come back to you. And you would like to have the intention or the thinking or the thought where you're disinterested in causing harm to others, because you see very clearly that whenever you cause harm, harm comes back to you. You can see this in your relationships, that whenever you are causing harm through your intentions, your speech, your actions, that it just produces unwholesome results for you. And in order to transform this, where your speech and your actions are emanating from a wholesome place, you need to have the intention or thinking or thought of harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So just a little recap here before I open up the questions and see if you guys have anything you'd like to get clarity on, is right view is understanding and practicing the Four Noble Truths, where essentially what you're doing is you're accepting responsibility for your own feelings, your intentions, your speech, and your actions. You're understanding that it's craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning that is causing your discontent feelings. You're not blaming other people for what you experience. You're looking inward and being introspective to be able to uncover the cravings, desires, attachments, the wants and expectations. You're not longing, yearning, and chasing things, but you're also not all the way over here on the other side where you're indifferent and you could care less and you're dull and lethargic and lazy. Usually the unenlightened mind can see these two sides very clearly. But what the Buddha is doing is inviting you to come to the middle way, where you can gradually pursue things as a goal, objective, or interest, with ambition, with enthusiasm, with motivation. But if you're chasing, and you can only be happy if you get what you want, well, you're not going to get what you want all the time because of impermanence. But if you're not doing that, what the unenlightened mind tends to do is it swings all the way over here to the other side, where it's feeling dull and lethargic and lazy. And that's not what you're interested in either. So you're going to need to bring the mind towards the middle, where you can gradually work towards things with ambition and motivation through wise decision making, not forming your feelings on whether you accomplish this thing or not. So right view is to make sure you maintain the understanding that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings based in craving, desire, attachment. And this is very empowering, because then you can have this breakthrough to now understanding, well, if your mind is causing these feelings, then that means you can eliminate them, right? That's the real beauty in this. Then right intention is to practice the intention of renunciation, where you're willing to let go of your false ideas, beliefs, and opinions and views, and your unwholesomeness, your unwholesome moral conduct. You're going to need to improve that. Then eliminate or having the intention of non-ill will, where you're cultivating loving kindness in the mind, and there's loving kindness meditation that's going to help you to do that. And then you're practicing harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to others. So let me know what questions you guys have here about the wisdom section of the Eightfold Path. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I see Marta's physical hand. Go ahead, ma'am. There should be a place for you to raise your electronic hand, because if you're down towards the bottom, I won't be able to see it.
Sure. Maybe I would just then jump in. Unfortunately, I try to figure it out, but my Zoom is not showing this, also on other meetings, so I can't, I don't know, maybe I can just try again, somehow. But anyway, so the question is, the right view is relatively easy for me to understand and follow, and then the right intention. What is the difference between non-in-will and the harmlessness, right? So non-in-will would be like rather loving and kindness and not thinking wrongly about other people, and the harmlessness is just the action, more like not to hurt other people, or how, like, because this is still like going into one bucket for me.
Yeah, your understanding it there is that the non-ill will is goodwill or active goodwill towards all beings. It's a mental state that you would like to cultivate, where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And then harmlessness is that you're disinterested in causing harm to others. So these things are similar, but with the non-ill will, you're cultivating the opposite of anger, hatred, and ill will, where you're cultivating this goodwill towards all beings. And then the harmlessness is, now that you have that goodwill, you're disinterested in having any kind of speech or actions that would cause harm to them.
Right, thank you. And then renunciation, also it's a little bit like how I try to approach this is to have a decision to be open-minded and see, like the wrong actions that I might, or wrong perspectives or views that I have, because it sometimes, we might not know what wrong view we have. So yeah, how would you encourage me to, or support me into practicing this, right? Like how, if you could try to define this a little bit more.
Yeah, what you're describing is what you would like to do is keep an open mind, understanding that if you experience any of these discontent feelings like anger, sadness, frustration, and others, there are certain false opinions, views, and beliefs that you have in your mind. Because if your mind was fully awake to the wisdom of the natural laws, you wouldn't experience those feelings. So you need to come to terms with understanding that while what you know right now has led you to where you are in life, there are certain things about this world that you don't currently understand. And you will never get to that understanding if you just hold on to what you currently think about the world. You need to be willing to let those things go, because there's certain false beliefs, opinions, and views in your mind. Otherwise, you wouldn't experience that anger and sadness and frustration. Those struggles and difficulties that one is experiencing is an indication that the mind is not yet awake and it's not yet fully enlightened. So you would like to get to the point where you understand that, you acknowledge that within your own mind, and now you keep an open mind to be able to learn this wisdom and bring this wisdom in. Not just the teachings of the Buddha, but there's plenty of wisdom in the world to be able to learn. Here on the Eightfold Path, the Buddha is referring to the wisdom that it takes to get to enlightenment, but we can expand this to be able to understand that there's plenty of wisdom in the world to be able to learn, and you are not interested in clinging or holding on to any thoughts or ideas that you have. When you bring in this wisdom, realize that, whoa, this conflicts with what you currently think about the world, and that's okay. Let me let go of these false beliefs and opinions and views, and now I have this wisdom about the world that is going to help me in my day-to-day life.
Thank you.
You're welcome. By the way, Marta, you might look on your Zoom. I think it's called participant. If you click there, I think there's a way to raise your hand. And maybe there's someone in Zoom that can send you a chat message in our Zoom to help you find that, because that would help you in case your video is below everybody else and I can't see it. That way I'll be able to answer your questions.
Participants, I have only invite and copy invite link, but yeah, maybe I have to kind of reinstall Zoom or something. But thank you.
Yeah. Sometimes people have trouble finding it, and sometimes just somebody chatting with you can help you to find it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I don't see any other questions anywhere, so I'm going to move to the next part of this Eightfold Path, which is moral conduct, which is right speech, right action, and right livelihood. Because once you understand right view and you understand that it's your own mind that's causing these feelings, you understand that any harsh or bitter or hostile moral conduct is unwise, because oftentimes we feel justified in our unenlightened state with our lack of wisdom. When we're being bitter and harsh and hostile to others, we feel justified in that. We think that, yeah, this person deserves it because they're the ones who are making me angry. But when you establish right view and you have right intention, you realize that the last thing you're interested in doing is being bitter and harsh and hostile to the people around you. But your mind doesn't necessarily have the wisdom of understanding wholesome moral conduct and how you could potentially be harming people through your speech or actions in your livelihood unless you study the original teachings of the Buddha. The teachings of the Buddha are going to provide you guidance to understand how you could potentially harm through your moral conduct, because your speech, actions, and livelihood should emanate from your right intention, that now you're disinterested in causing harm to others. So now let me understand how to not cause harm through my speech, my actions, and my livelihood. So when you see moral conduct from the Buddha, he's teaching you the natural law of dhamma. He's not teaching you rules and commandments. He's not trying to convince you to do anything, because it's your practice. Remember, a Buddha has already gotten to enlightenment. They're completely peaceful and joyful. They're not trying to convince you of anything. They're not trying to force or control you to do anything. They're just sharing with you what it took for them to get to that enlightened mental state so that you can experience it too, if that's what you would like to do. So the Buddha is helping you to be able to understand this natural law of cause and effect, or action and result, because everything that you decide in terms of your moral conduct, it's going to produce a certain result for you. If you're making wise decisions, you will experience wholesome dhamma or wholesome results. If you're experiencing unwholesome gamma, that's from your unwise decisions. Your unwise decisions are going to lead to this unwholesome results in your day-to-day life in terms of your relationships. And if you haven't studied this natural law very closely, you're most likely out there inadvertently making decisions about your moral conduct that are leading to harm, and now this harm is coming back to you. So the Buddha is going to teach you through right speech, right action, right livelihood, how to have wise moral conduct. Why it's referred to as right speech, right action, right livelihood, you might think about it like wise speech or wise actions or wise livelihood, because this is how you're going to ensure you're not causing harm to others. And now you'll see that the condition of your mind and your relationships are going to really improve because you're now functioning through these natural laws, because it's your life, your decisions, and your results. And if you have wisdom about these natural laws, now you can practice in a wise way that's producing wholesome results for you. So here with right speech, you can see the words of the Buddha that he's sharing in what, monks, is right speech. Refraining from lying, refraining from slander, refraining from harsh speech, refraining from frivolous speech. This is called right speech. So what he's doing here is he's sharing with you speech that is based in craving, desire, attachment. Because remember, the Eightfold Path is the path to eliminating craving, desire, attachment. Each one of these 4 types of speech is based in craving, desire, attachment. So for example, when we were lying as little kids and you were telling falsehoods, there was something you wanted. And if you told the truth, you felt like you wouldn't get what you wanted. So the mind was longing, yearning, and craving something, so it told a lie. But then people discovered our lies, and they found out that we were lying, and they considered us to be undependable, unreliable, and untrustworthy. And this affected our relationships, both personally and professionally, if we did any lying in our personal and professional life. And if you've done a lot of lying, you know that it was really challenging to keep all your lies straight, right? You had to tell one person one thing and another person another thing. How would you ever be able to get to peace and joy within your own mind if your mind was obsessively trying to figure out what you said to one person versus another? So by telling the truth, then you can be dependable, reliable, and trustworthy in all these situations, and you'll see that your personal, professional relationships will really improve. Slander is where there's like gossip or an individual is trying to damage other people's reputation. What the mind is thinking here is it's having a craving to look good in front of other people. And it thinks if I diminish other people and I make them look bad, then I will look better. But it's actually just the opposite. You don't look very well at all when you're damaging other people's reputation. It's kind of like the mind is going into a dark room and everybody has a candle, and the mind's like, let me put out everybody's candle because then my candle will shine brighter. Where you don't need to put out people's candle. We're in a dark room. We need everybody's candle to be shining, right? So putting out other people's candle isn't actually going to help you in your day-to-day life. If you were gossiping and slandering, this is causing harm to people's reputation, and now they're going to be interested in causing you harm. At the height of this, you can actually be murdered, right? This is why investigative reporters end up dead. The teachings of the Buddha aren't describing to you the way the world should be. The Buddha's teachings are explaining to you the way the world is. And the way the world is that if you go out into the world and you're damaging people's reputation, there's going to be harm that's coming your way. At the very least, there's going to be people gossiping and slandering about you. If you've ever done any gossiping and slandering, when your back is turned, those people are gossiping and slandering about you. So you would like to get to the point where you're not gossiping and slandering about others because you're not interested in people gossiping and slandering about you. So by you refraining from and eliminating that, now you'll eliminate a certain amount of harm that you're causing, and you'll experience more and more wholesome results in your day-to-day life. Also, the Buddha is teaching you to eliminate harsh speech. This is your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. There's an underlying craving there. When you're being bitter and harsh and hostile with animosity towards others, maybe having resentment towards them, there's a certain craving that's not getting fulfilled. And now the mind thinks if I'm harsh and bitter with this person, I'll get what I want. It's kind of like trying to fear this person into doing things your way. Where what you would like to do is more and more practice being gentle with the people around you, paying attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. This will be the most challenging with the people that you're closest to. Your parents, your siblings, your life partner, your children, people like this. You'll find it the most challenging in those relationships because that's where you have the deepest cravings. Your acquaintances, your coworkers, you don't experience that very much because you don't have craving, desire, attachment in those relationships. So you're going to need the mental discipline section that I'm going to be describing to you in order to help you put in practice things like right speech so that you can knock down your cravings, desires, attachments, and you don't have to speak harshly and bitter. You can use gentle speech. Frivolous speech, there's a craving there. What frivolous speech is where you're just talking and talking and talking and talking and talking. There's really no purpose or benefit to the conversation. It's not even a conversation. It's like a person is just broadcasting, right? They might be talking for 20, 30 minutes or so, right? And in this situation, you're not having a conversation and people are going to be less and less interested in talking to you because there's an underlying craving there for you to just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. So you would like there to be a back and forth, an actual conversation. And this is going to produce more harmonious relationships for you because you're not causing harm through your speech. But then once you get all of these well underway, you would like to go deeper into the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. This is a teaching that integrates into the Eightfold Path, where the Buddha teaches you to speak at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and with a mind of loving kindness. Speaking at the proper time is making sure that you're not interrupting people. If you're interrupting people, there's a craving there. Your mind's longing, yearning to speak. You can't be patient. The mind wants to jump in and talk over people. And you know that when people do that to you, you don't like it, so you would like to refrain from doing that yourself. Also, speaking at the proper time is making sure your mind is the proper time to talk. Wherever you're angry or hostile or bitter or harsh or frustrated or agitated or annoyed, that's not the proper time to talk because that's all that's going to come out is your bitterness and harshness and hostility. Then also making sure it's the proper time for the other person to talk. If they're frustrated or agitated or annoyed or angry, nothing's getting in that situation, so it's better just to not even talk. Speaking the truth is the same thing we were talking about up here with the Eightfold Path. So you'd like to speak the truth, not just spreading conspiracy theories and unfounded things, but things that you know to be true through your own direct experience. Speaking gently is what we were talking about up here, that you pay attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. You're going to need to do this in all the different languages that you speak because like English language, there's words that we used to once use that aren't necessarily so common right now that you're going to need to bring back into your vocabulary perhaps. Things like please and thank you and you're welcome and things like ma'am or sir or things like this. You can look at the languages that you speak and make sure that you're speaking polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all those situations. Paying attention to your tone, your tempo, and your word choice. Then speaking beneficially, this is about the method of how you're speaking, that you would like to speak purposefully and beneficially, where you're clear and concise about how you're speaking. Because if you just kind of ramble and jumping all over the place, it makes it very challenging for people to understand what it is that you're sharing. So if you're interested in being influential in your personal professional life, you're going to need to speak clear and concise, not just rambling chit-chat that's unbeneficial and unpurposeful. Then you would like to wrap all of this in a mind of loving kindness. Whereas if you were speaking with a mind of inner hate, that's not going to go well for you. So you would like to speak with a mind of loving kindness where you have a genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. So you can take these 5 factors of well-spoken speech and all the others here that we were talking about as part of the Eightfold Path, and you can independently verify what the Buddha is teaching you here is wise, because there's been situations where you've had conversations that didn't go well for you. It produced unwholesome results. And in those situations, you can see that you and the other person perhaps wasn't actually practicing these 5 factors, that you weren't speaking at the proper time. You weren't speaking the truth. You weren't speaking gently or beneficially or with a mind of loving kindness. And that's why the conversation didn't go well. Because these natural laws laws affect you, whether you're aware of them or not. And just like these natural laws do affect you, whether you're aware of them or not, there's been certain situations where your conversations have gone well, right? And you can look at those conversations and see that you were practicing these 5 factors without even realizing it. And the other person was too. But now what you would like to do is start consciously practicing these more and more and more. You might actually need to look at these in the morning before you go off to any business meetings or have a conversation on the phone with your family or friends. Look at these and kind of refresh your memory for 2 or 3 minutes and then actually have the conversation. And then when you're done, maybe at lunchtime or in the evening, you can look over these again and kind of recall what it was that you did during the day and look at the ones that you were able to practice really well throughout your day and look at the ones that you need more work on so you can dial this in closer and closer and closer. In Thailand, we have something called barami, which is the one who people listen to. This is a Thai word that we understand that there are certain elders in the village that have barami. These are the ones who people listen to. They're very influential in a Thai village. They're very successful, and people know that they're successful. But when we say successful, we don't mean money and monetarily successful. Anybody can go out and make a bunch of money. But what we're talking about here is they have harmonious relationships. If you're successful, you have harmonious relationships, right? And that's what's going to help you in life. So anybody who's practicing these 5 factors of well-spoken speech, they're not causing harm to others. So more and more, there's plenty of people who are interested in talking with them, and they're very influential in the community. If someone needs help, they will tend to go talk to the elders in the community. So if you're interested in being influential in your personal life, with your family and friends, or your professional life, you're going to need to practice the 5 factors of well-spoken speech so you can develop barami. This isn't going to happen in 1 week or 1 month, but over the multiple months and years of practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, you'll become very influential within the communities that you navigate in because you'll have barami, the one who people listen to. So you'd like to develop the ability to speak polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. Keeping in mind, this is going to be gradual training, gradual practice, and gradual progress. Just because you've learned these intellectually, you can't just snap your fingers and instantly start practicing them. You're going to need to learn them intellectually, making sure you memorize them. You're going to need to reflect on them and see that they're true, but then you're going to need to practice them. And this is where you're going to see your relationship significantly improve, and that's how you'll know that these are the truth, because you won't be experiencing constant harm coming back to you as you practice these for longer and longer periods of time. Then you would like to pay attention to your actions. This is the 4th step, where the Buddha teaches you to eliminate taking life, taking what is not given, and sexual misconduct. Here he's giving you 3 impactful bodily actions that could cause harm. Now here he's giving you very basic rudimentary description because in the 5 precepts, which we're going to study 2 weeks from now, the Buddha uses much more illuminating language that plugs into this. If you've heard that the Buddha taught no killing, no stealing, no sexual misconduct, no lying, and no intoxicants, that's actually not the teachings of the Buddha. A Buddha doesn't teach that way. That sounds like black and white. It sounds like rules and commandments. The Buddha is going to give you much more illuminating language that is going to help you to further understand what these are as part of right action. What he's essentially teaching you to do is to not cause harm through your bodily actions, but he's not giving you an exhaustive list. Notice he doesn't say, don't walk up to someone and punch them in the face, right? But if you understand right action, you understand that's unwise because this person can pull out a knife, they can pull out a gun, their friends and family could attack you. You're not interested in causing harm through your bodily actions. The Buddha doesn't say, don't drag a suitcase through the aisle of a plane and bump into people's knees and run over their feet because airplanes didn't even exist during the lifetime of the Buddha. But if you understand right action and you're not interested in causing harm to other beings through your bodily actions, then you understand that you can come up with these where the Buddha is giving you these 3 impactful ones to pay attention to, but then you're going to need to look at all the others that are out there because the Buddha wouldn't have been able to give you an exhaustive list. Then you would like to look at your livelihood. Your livelihood is how you choose to sustain your life. This is how you might acquire certain resources, certain income, and things like this. In the Eightfold Path, the Buddha just gives you some very basic description here. He says, in what, monks, is right livelihood? Here, monks, the noble disciple, which is a close student who's studying closely, having given up wrong livelihood, keeps himself by right livelihood. So here the Buddha is just saying, okay, you need to practice right livelihood. But when you look in his other teachings, he has the details about what is right livelihood. And here is one of those, that this is the first fold of purification that I'm going to teach you here, where he teaches you that it would be unwise to have weapons as part of your business, or living beings, or meat, or substances that cause heedlessness or poisons. That if your end product is that you're selling weapons to others, those are meant to cause harm to others, and now you're sustaining your life off of causing harm to others. Or if you were selling living beings or meat or having substances that cause heedlessness as your business, or you were having business in poisons, you're going to need to independently verify this and see the truth for yourself. And then if you're conducting any of these livelihoods, choose to move away from them. As long as you're practicing any of these livelihoods, it's going to cause harm, and harm is going to come back to you. So this substances that cause heedlessness, you can see this to be true. That if I was on the street corner selling crystal methamphetamine or heroin into my community, I'm causing harm. These people are getting addicted to the substance. It's causing harm to their physical body. They're going out to maybe steal and things like this in order to bring me money. Well, now standing on the street corner, I can get beat up, I can get murdered, I can get robbed, I can get arrested, I can get addicted to these substances myself. This is all the unwholesome results of my unwise decisions to stand on the street corner and sell these drugs into the community. The natural law of dhamma is functioning at a much higher level than the laws of society, because most places in the world, it's illegal to sell things like heroin and crystal methamphetamine and things like that. But there's some places in the world where it's not illegal to sell those things. You can actually sell those things, right? So you're not looking at the government's laws, because the government's laws are made by human beings and they're prone to error. They're going to make mistakes. So the government might say, like, yeah, if you'd like to work at that liquor store and be a cashier, go ahead. You can work at that liquor store. We're not going to arrest you for that. But if you know the natural law of dhamma, you know that's unwise, because those are the places that people tend to rob, people get beat up, people get murdered, working as a cashier at a liquor store, for example. And at the very least, you're going to be dealing with intoxicated clientele that are coming in from time to time. And how can you get to a peaceful and joyful life if you're constantly having to deal with intoxicated people? So this natural law here that the Buddha is teaching you is beyond the laws of society. So here he's giving you these 5 livelihoods that would cause harm, and you would like to pay attention to these and make sure you're not conducting any of these livelihoods. Then you would like to look at how you're performing your livelihood. This is part of the first fold of purification, to be able to get you to a point where you're experiencing more peace and more joy and more success in your livelihood. The Buddha teaches you to eliminate scheming, flattering, hinting, belittling, and pursuing gain with gain. So what scheming is like corruption. Like if I was a politician, like if I was the mayor of a town, I'm not causing any harm to anybody. I'm running this town, right? But if I was corrupt and I was doing backhanded things, this is going to cause harm. And now when people find out, they're not going to be interested in electing me. So now 10, 15 years into my career, I find it very difficult to support myself because I can't get reelected, right? And I've based my career in this politics, and now this scheming, this corruption is causing me difficulties. Then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate flattering in your livelihood. What this is giving insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. If you've ever gone into a store and they were like, wow, that shirt looks really beautiful on you. It brings out the colors of your eyes and the shape of your face. You look so beautiful or handsome. You know, come over here. I have these really nice earrings that you would really like because they're going to go with that shirt really nicely. Right? And now when you've experienced that, perhaps you're like, ugh, you might have felt icky, like you didn't even want to go into the store, right? So the Buddha is teaching you not to do that, where you don't have these insincere comments just to get people to buy things from you. What hinting is where you're not clear and concise about the work that you're doing. If all of us were on a project team and we needed to go brief the boss about what we were doing, we'd like to be clear and concise and precise in the way that we're communicating to the boss so that they will know what it is that we're up to. And now we're going to have more success in our livelihood. Belittling is being degrading or diminishing to your customers, your coworkers, your business partners, or your competition, where you're degrading and diminishing other people, the mind, once again, is thinking that it's going to make you look good. But it actually doesn't. If you're degrading your competition or the other people around you in the professional world, people are going to turn away from you. They're not going to be interested in doing business with you, because people do business with people. They don't do business with businesses, right? They're doing business with people. And you, as a person, having a relationship with an individual, that's where people are going to feel comfortable spending money with you, and actually you can be successful in your livelihood. So you would like to keep that in mind, that people are doing business with a person. And if that person is being belittling and degrading and diminishing others, people aren't going to be interested in doing business with you. So you would like to eliminate any belittling. Then the Buddha teaches you to eliminate pursuing gain with gain. What this is where you're not really interested in the product or service, that you just are going there to collect a paycheck, that you really don't care about the work that you're doing. You're just in it for the money. And if you've ever had that kind of job, you might have been really excited at the beginning for the first few months when you're getting all that money, but then that wears off. And now you're kind of dragging yourself to work each day. You're feeling unmotivated, feeling dull and lethargic, making your way to work. So what you would like to do is have enthusiasm and ambition about going to work. You'd like to be motivated, because if you go somewhere for 8 hours a day or longer, and you're dreading going to this place, you're not going to experience the peace and the joy that the Buddha is teaching you about. So you'd like to get to the point where you're not just taking a job based on money, that you thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing. If you've been here to Thailand, or if you come to Thailand, or you've been to this kind of place before, you'll see a lot of people that are doing things that they thoroughly enjoy. Here in Thailand, you might go to the street, you might get some street food, and there might be a little old lady standing on the corner selling mango and sticky rice, where she went out in her mango grove this morning and she brushed off the mangoes and picked each one, and she washed them off, and she made her sticky rice and her coconut milk, and now she's on the street corner serving it to you, slicing up the mango, putting it on top of the hot sticky rice, scooping the coconut milk on top of the mango, and she's serving it to you, and she's collecting her little $1.25, right? Her 40 baht. She's just collecting that little bit of money, and she's got the biggest smile on her face. And she can't imagine doing anything else in the world other than serving you that mango and sticky rice. And even if she didn't get paid for it, she'd probably still be interested to do it because she enjoys it that much. So what you're going to need to do is find your mango and sticky rice. What is your mango and sticky rice? What is it that you'll thoroughly enjoy, and you would even do it even if you didn't get paid for it? Of course, you're going to need to get paid for it because you need to sustain your life, but you would like to get to the point where you thoroughly enjoy what you're doing so much that you would even do it if you didn't get paid for it because you enjoy it that much. So this first fold of purification is helping you to get to a point where you're not causing harm through your livelihood, and you can be successful in your day-to-day life in terms of performing that livelihood. There's a second fold of purification that the Buddha teaches around right livelihood, that you're going to find that in volume 12, chapter 14 of our book series. So if you're in a job that you don't really like right now, or if you're in between jobs and you're unemployed and you're looking to get a new job, you might consider looking at volume 12, chapter 14. That's where you'll see the exhaustive teachings of the Buddha on the first fold and second fold of purification for your right livelihood. And you'll see words from me in there as well. And remember, you can get these books at no cost from our website. You can take it and go print it. You can download it and just read it as a soft copy. You can get it on Amazon, or you can get them here at our temple in Chiang Mai. So this is right livelihood. And there's importance for you to be able to be in a livelihood that you thoroughly enjoy and you're motivated to do each day. That when your alarm clock goes off in the morning, it's like, wow, can't wait to get into work today, right? It doesn't even feel like work. You just enjoy it so much. So just to summarize this before I open up to questions, is with right speech, you would like to have all your verbal conduct to be harmless. And you would like to think about this not as just right speech, but as right communication. Because during the lifetime of the Buddha, all they did was speech, right? That's all they had was speech. But nowadays, we communicate not only through verbal speech, but text, chat, post, email, social media, all these different things. Whereas if I went into a job interview and I really knocked it out of the park, Well, if they would have looked at my social media, they might not hire me, right? So you would like to be sure you're practicing the 5 factors of well-spoken speech in all communication. If you find yourself pounding on the keyboard, really angry and hostile and bitter, that's not the proper time to be communicating. Maybe hit save on that email instead of hitting send. Because when you hit send, you're sending out that harshness and bitterness out into the world. It's going to come back to you. So you would like to make sure that it's the proper time to be speaking and that you're not causing harm through any of your communication at all. Then you would like to pay attention to your bodily actions, making sure that you're not causing any harm through your bodily actions, that they are harmless. Understanding that the Buddha shares to eliminate killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, and he's going to explain to you more about what that is in the 5 precepts. But then in more detail, you're going to need to pay attention to your own bodily conduct because the Buddha is not giving you an exhaustive list. Then look at your livelihood and be working towards a right livelihood where you can thoroughly enjoy the work that you're doing, that you can find your mango and sticky rice, that you just have the biggest smile when you're going to work each day because you enjoy it that much. So it looks like we have some questions coming in. So if you guys have questions, you can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom in the comment section, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like Arvind is first. If you'd like to go ahead, sir.
Hi, Teacher David. Thank you for your lesson today. I have a question with regards to intention and the work that we're doing. So let's say we have, there's like 2 nurses in a hospital. One nurse is there because it's just a job and she has to get paid, and she's just doing the everyday things that she has to do, and she's doing it just because it's just another day in the office kind of thing. And that's nurse number 1. And there's nurse number 2 who, when she's doing the job, although she's doing the same kind of work, she does it with the intention of helping and healing the other people. Now, what happens to both of those nurses? Let's just say during this life and at the end of their life, any difference in the karma that they generate and in the benefits that they would gain in this life and the next life?
Yeah, absolutely. That person who is practicing right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, that they thoroughly enjoy the work that they're doing, they're going to have great interactions with their patients, with the doctors, with cleaning staff of the hospital and all the people around them. Their bedside manner is going to be really nice, where they're having all these wonderful results in their relationships. Where the person who resents being there and is only there for the money, they're going to have a much harder time interacting with patients and all the other people around them. So now they're going to go home, they're going to be stressed and having anxiety and frustration. They're going to be dragging themselves to work each day. They're not going to be promoted as easily as this person who's really thoroughly enjoying their work. So there's all kinds of wholesome dhamma around having what the Buddha is describing here as the wisdom section and the moral conduct section to be practicing in your livelihood. And then in terms of the afterlife, there's going to be challenges there too. This person who's practicing the wholesome moral conduct, they're more likely to get to enlightenment in this life, where this other person, if they continue to be practicing in the way that they are, they're not going to get to enlightenment in this life, and they're going to experience rebirth. To describe exactly what these individuals are going to experience at their rebirth, you can't say, because there's more factors than just what they're doing in their livelihood that's going to determine where they're reborn, if they're reborn, right? But the ultimate goal would be for everybody to learn and practice these teachings and get to enlightenment so there isn't any rebirth. Okay, looks like person with the name Jay. Go ahead.
Hi, David. Thanks so much for the teaching. I have a question. I wanted to understand, how does one go about it practically in terms of cultivating non-ill will, right speech, and loving kindness, maintain good intention towards someone that you're upset with, or whose actions you're very angry at. Knowing that it's not wise, but also practically finding it hard to do so. So I just wonder what if you have any advice. Thanks.
Sure. This is where the mental discipline section is going to come in. When we're talking here in a moment, you're going to be able to see how to now practice the moral conduct. Without the mental discipline, you wouldn't actually be able to practice the moral conduct because, like you said, it's great that you know that it's wise to speak in this way, but if your mental state isn't well developed to be able to speak in that way, you'll find it really difficult. So after I teach the mental discipline section, let me know if you still have that question because it should be answered when we're going through that, but maybe you have a follow-up question at that point.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Looks like Ted or Kristen has a question. Go ahead, guys.
Hi, thank you, Teacher David. My question is about right speech. And recently I've had a lot of family members in town visiting, and one of the family members that is here that lives in Florida is struggles in with anger and bitterness and hostility and the way that they speak. And because I live here with them right now, I've kind of been practicing on like sort of how to handle and sort of be around this person. I've been able to sort of, I don't know, I guess not let it get to me like it used to, where their speech would irritate me or kind of get me a little upset or irritated. But my brother and his wife were here and they're just not used to it. And so this family member is speaking like they generally do with a lot of harsh speech and bitterness. And so they were like, they were speaking to my brother and his wife in this manner, and they reacted. And Ted and I were there and we're sort of used to it. And so we just sort of stay quiet because it's kind of the only way I know how to sort of get through that kind of sort of bad speech, if you will. And just kind of like, so anyway, the long story of it is that my brother's wife reacted, and immediately there was fire, right? Fireworks just went off, and now there's some bickering going on, and ended quite quickly, thank goodness. But then later, when we're all kind of away from the situation and my sister-in-law is talking to me about kind of what happened, this is where I get a little confused in what's slander and what isn't. Because I understand what she's going through because I go through it all the time with this person and the way that they speak. And I'm trying to be sort of helpful and like understanding, but I'm also trying to be careful with not adding.
Sure.
And I tend to sometimes, like, I try not to, but then I find myself like then getting kind of into it a little bit. I'm like, yeah, I know, she does that to me too, and then maybe going a little bit deeper than I need to. So I guess there's that fine line with how do you support someone and sort of acknowledge bad behavior without it turning into gossip or slander, I guess is the question.
Sure. It's all about the intention, right? Because you can talk about unwise moral conduct of someone in order to help this person with the intention of helping this person, that you're not degrading and diminishing the person who had the unwise moral conduct, but instead you're helping this person to be able to understand this unwise moral conduct in a way that helps them to be able to get to improvement in their mind. So it's all about the intention behind it. So when the last part, when you were talking about how you were like, yeah, that person does that to me too, and I don't like it, and if you were doing any of that stuff, that's the gossip and the slander where it's diminishing this person's reputation. But if you focus on things like, I understand where you're coming from, I see why you're upset, I understand, and then now you focus on helping this person to overcome that through eliminating their craving, their desire, their attachment, that's what's going to help them. And what I would advise that person to do in the future is when those kinds of things happen is just get up and walk away. That you're not interested in just staying there when this person is being bitter and harsh and hostile. Just get up and walk away. And now this person slowly over time realizes that whenever they're bitter and hostile and harsh, people get up and walk away from them and they're not interested in talking to them. Slowly but surely, this person will see the natural law of dhamma and potentially decide to improve their moral moral conduct, but that's not ultimately what you're going for. You would like to eliminate your own cravings, desires, your wants and expectations for this person to be a certain way. So you can help that individual, your sister-in-law, I think you said it was, that you can give her guidance, that you understand why she's experiencing what she's experiencing, because you understand craving, desire, attachment, and then give her advice to just get up and walk away. And that's the best way to handle those situations.
Okay, so I definitely didn't handle that well then, because I definitely got into it. And it felt bad. Like I knew right away it didn't feel right, but it was too late. It came out of my mouth. So, okay, I'll try.
I failed miserably, but I know that it doesn't feel good participating in the negativity.
Yeah.
This is how you know that what the decisions you're making or whether they're wise or unwise, because if they were wise, you wouldn't experience that miserable feeling. That's part of the unwholesome karma that you're experiencing as a result of the unwise decision. Whereas if you're making a wholesome and a wise decision, your mind won't experience that. And rather than think about it as a failure, just think it as it's an opportunity that exposed a certain aspect of your practice to you, that now you have understanding that you need to improve that, and now you can cultivate the wisdom to improve that. Because you're going to have missteps. Between now and enlightenment, you're going to have plenty of missteps. And each one of those, rather than look at them as a failure, look at it as an opportunity to be able to see where to improve and then just focus on the improvement. That's going to keep you motivated in going forward rather than thinking in a diminishing way about what you've experienced.
Thank you.
You're welcome. No, Emily is asking, is it inevitable then that one gives up eating animal meat on the path to enlightenment? It's potential that somebody might choose to do that. You know, we're in this period of time where more and more people are moving to plant-based food. And this is really helpful for your own body and your own mind, because when you're eating animal flesh, it's causing harm to this animal that had to die in order to do that. And now there's certain drugs and hormones and toxins that you're ingesting. It's not just the animal flesh, and it's affecting the health of the body and the mind. So people might choose to move to a plant-based food supply, but because we're kind of like the first generation that's doing this in a significant way, there's going to be some people who will make those shifts, and they might have 90, 95, even 98% of their diet, their ability to eat and ingest food is plant-based food, but then they need to still eat a little bit of animal products because they're practicing loving kindness and compassion for this being. I went over to vegan for like 5 or 6 years or so, and my B12 dropped pretty significantly, and I was taking supplements, but it just wasn't working to be able to keep my B12 where it needed to be. So I needed to go back to some eggs, and I started eating some ice cream, because these are things that I wouldn't eat meat again, but these are things that have B12 in it, and I was able to eat those and build up my B12. And now I'm working in the direction of getting back away from those things so I can go back to plant-based food. So you might notice this if you're choosing to switch over to plant-based food, that you might notice that you need to kind of build it up in this way. Ultimately, when more and more people are plant-based food eaters, the way that we were in the past when we first originated as humanity, we'll have that B12 and we'll be able to function fine with just eating plant-based food. But in the interim, there's going to be some people that move to plant-based food and they'll be just fine, but there'll be some people that aren't able to fully do that. And it's up to each individual to decide if they would like to do that or when they would like to do that. There's no rule or commandment from me or anybody else that's going to try to guilt, shame, or fear or force you to do that. But the more you understand about the natural law and you start seeing the harm that this eating of meat is doing, you might come to that conclusion yourself that you're interested in moving away from meat and eating plant-based food. But again, when or if someone does this, it's a personal choice for each individual. Arvin, you have a question?
Yes, Teacher David. This relates to the right livelihood question on pursuing gain from gain. Teacher David, there are a lot of, people that are now investing in like the stock market or Bitcoin, or, they're even in some businesses. And, the focus on that is really on the return on investment that you're going to get. It's not really about there's no real moral value towards these kind of investments. And I want to know what is the Buddha's, if he was around now, like how would he advise us on these kind of ventures and businesses?
Yeah, if you're investing, there's no harm in doing investments, and there's no harm in becoming wealthy. There's enlightened beings who are wealthy. The wealth isn't the problem. It's about making sure that you acquire that wealth ethically so that you're not causing harm to others, and that then you're not tied to your wealth, that you're able to practice generosity with it. So if somebody was going to invest in order to make profit, you would like to do that in a moral and ethical way that it's not causing harm. So if you have stocks or mutual funds or investments, you would like to invest in companies and businesses that are doing wholesome things in the world. And that's part of your investment strategy that somebody can have. But the investment themselves, it isn't a problem to invest and make money. You would just like to do it in a way that's not causing harm.
Okay, thank you, teacher.
You're welcome. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So now I'm going to move into the mental discipline section, which really sets apart the teachings of the Buddha and really allows you to practice things like the moral conduct. You wouldn't be able to practice the moral conduct without the mental discipline, but you wouldn't be really even interested in the moral conduct in mental discipline without the wisdom section. So all of these are working together. You're not mastering one before you move on to the other. You're really practicing them all, dialing them all in and tweaking each dial, like that speaker system that you're trying to get a better and better quality sound out of the speakers. You're getting a better and better quality performing mind by practicing the mental discipline, which is going to allow you to practice the moral conduct, right? So you wouldn't be able to practice this moral conduct if you didn't have the mental discipline to go with it, so that it actually is knocking down the pollutions of your mind, because you need to intellectually understand wise moral conduct. But if that's all you had and you didn't have the ability to knock down the pollution of your mind, you wouldn't be able to implement the moral conduct. So the mental discipline is so important because that's going to allow you to knock down the pollutions that the Buddha discovered, so that then you can practice the moral conduct. So we're going to start with this first one, which is right effort. And when I teach this in other programs where, and even at the beginning of this program, I went through this very thoroughly and I read this for you guys. Now I'm just going to jump in and teach it to you, because the Buddha here is teaching 4 aspects of right effort. And you can read this, it's in the book if you'd like. But let me just teach you what he's actually teaching you, because he's describing for you 4 aspects of right effort, where you're going to need to apply the effort to prevent unwholesome qualities from arising in the mind. There are certain unwholesome qualities that are not currently in your mind, and you would like to prevent those from ever coming into the mind. An example of that might be things like killing a human being. That's probably the farthest thing from your mind right now. And you would like to prevent that type of thing and others from ever coming into your mind. So if you ever notice that there's some unwholesome mental state that's trying to come into your mind, you apply the right effort to prevent that from coming into your mind, because you know that that's going to cause harm and it would produce unwholesome results for you, unwholesome karma for you. Then there's certain unwholesome mental states that are currently in your mind, and you're going to need to apply the effort to eliminate those. Some examples might be if somebody was in a relationship and they had a craving for sexual contact outside of their existing relationship. If you understand the natural law, then you know that that's going to cause harm in your relationship, and you would like to abandon that by applying the effort to cut that off and let it go and not allow that to continue to exist in the mind. Or if you have anger and frustration or irritation, if you're noticing that unwholesome quality coming up in your mind, or any of the other discontent feelings, you would like to apply the effort to abandon that and cut it off and eliminate it from the mind. Then the third one is produce unarisen wholesome mental states to arise in the mind, because there's certain wholesome mental states that are not currently in your mind right now that you're going to need to apply the effort to bring in. And by bringing these wholesome mental states into the mind, it's going to move your mind closer and closer to enlightenment. So for example, generosity is the giving and sharing of more than is strictly required in any given situation, such as your time, your effort, your energy, and your resources, without any expectation of anything in return. This is going to help you eliminate craving, desire, attachment, because with craving, desire, attachment, attachment in the mind can be selfish. It can hold on to things. It's like my money, my clothes, my jewelry, mine, 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 mine. But if you practice generosity where you're living open-handedly and you're joyful in giving and sharing with others, this is going to train your mind to let go. So if you take your clothes out of the dryer and your clothes are ripped, and you get frustrated with that, you can see that you're attached to your clothing. You're going to need to practice generosity with your clothing. Or if you see that when your bank account balance is up here, and then when it goes down here, you get frustrated, you have an attachment to your money. You're going to need to give and share without any expectation of anything in return, so that way your mind can let go. But you need to practice your generosity from the middle as well. You can't do that extensively because then you won't have what you need to sustain your life. But if you are never sharing with others, you're going to be quite selfish. We were all taught as children to give and share. We were taught to share our toys, but we weren't necessarily taught why. It enhances the quality of your mind. It allows you to eliminate craving, desire, attachment, so that way you knock down the cause of your discontent feelings. If you're interested in eliminating your anger and your frustration and all these other discontent feelings, you're going to need to practice a certain amount of generosity. The Buddha teaches you to practice this daily, where you're frequently practicing generosity. Then there's things like compassion. Compassion would be the concern for the misfortune of others, where you might be on one side of this where you're indifferent and you could care less about other people. It's kind of like you might see a homeless person or someone who's addicted to substances. You might be like, I don't care. It's not my friend. It's not my family. I don't care, right? You might be indifferent to their difficulties and struggles. Or you might be all the way on the other side of this, where you have worry and anxiety about every little situation. Oh my goodness, those kids don't have food, and you're so worried about that. Well, the way that you bring your mind to the middle is with compassion, where you have concern for the misfortune of others, but you're not basing your feelings on what is transpiring with other people. So your compassion is a mental state that you're going to need to apply effort to bring into your mind. If you don't have compassion, you're going to need to apply the effort to bring that in and practice it more and more closely. And that's going to eliminate your indifference, and that's going to eliminate your worry and anxiety. Then you're going to need to apply the effort to maintain wholesome mental states that have arisen, not allowing them to fade away, and work to increase their growth in the mind, bring them to full perfection and full development. And there's certain wholesome mental states that you currently have in your mind, like something like loving kindness. You probably have this in your mind, where you have genuine interest in seeing all beings be well. And you can practice that in certain situations. But in other situations, you might find that difficult or hard, where people are angry or frustrated or agitated. You're maybe functioning in that way towards them. Your anger is coming out towards those individuals, where that's because your loving kindness hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. So you're going to need to apply the effort to bring this into the mind and bubble it up more and more to the point where you can be loving and kind with all beings. Or something like sympathetic joy. Sympathetic joy is the joy for others' success, even if you didn't contribute to it. This is the opposite of jealousy or envy, and you would like to practice this in all situations. And there's probably some situations where you have this. Maybe someone's interested in going on a trip or taking a vacation, and you've been to that place, and you might be like, wow, that's a wonderful thing. Congratulations. Enjoy your time in Bermuda or the Dominican Republic or Jamaica or the Caribbean or wherever it is that they're going. You might be like, wow, enjoy yourself. You're going to have a great time. But then maybe you're at work and people are applying for a promotion and you're applying for that same new job that opened up, bigger salary, nicer office, better title, and maybe they get the job instead of you. And now you're jealous or envious of them. This is because the mind hasn't fully developed its sympathetic joy. So you're going to like to apply the effort to arise that sympathetic joy, bring it to full growth and full perfection and full development. Because if you have these qualities in some situations but not others, that means it hasn't been brought to full growth and full perfection and full development. What's going to allow you to practice this right effort is the next step of right mindfulness. Now, these are just examples that I've shared What's unwholesome in your mind or what's wholesome in your mind, that's going to be unique to you. So what the Buddha is teaching you here is to apply right effort, to apply the effort to prevent the unwholesome, to abandon the unwholesome that is currently in your mind, to apply effort to bring in the wholesome, and apply effort to maintain and support the wholesome qualities in your mind. But the things that are wholesome or unwholesome in your mind is going to be unique to you. And it's this next step that's going to help you to be able to uncover that, which is the mindfulness. Here, the Buddha is describing body as body, the feelings as feelings, the mind as mind, and the mental objects as mental objects. He's describing 4 things. These are called the 4 foundations of mindfulness. In general, mindfulness is awareness of mind, where you would like to be aware of the thoughts and ideas and the various things that are going on in your mind. Your meditation is going to help you with that. That's the 8th factor of the Eightfold Path. But you need to build this awareness of your mind. Whereas if you're just plowing through the world, knocking down the trees, burning up the forest, not really paying attention to the decisions that you're making, you're not going to be able to have mindfulness or awareness of mind, and you're not going to be able to purify your mind. So some people use this word mindfulness in a way that the Buddha didn't use it. And if those people choose to use it that way, that's up to them. But you would like to come to a better understanding of this word, where in modern conversations, you might hear people say, can you mindfully carry this glass of water to the table? What they're saying is, can you carefully carry this glass of water to the table? Where what you would like to understand that this word means is awareness of mind. And you might hang out there for a few months, just building that awareness of mind. But then in more detail, you would like to build the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. What this is this is the life cycle that discontentedness is going to take as it's arising in your mind. When you have certain contact through your eyes, your ears, your nose, your tongue, the body, or the mind itself, you're going to experience agreeable contact, where you find this contact to be agreeable, and that's where you're going to have pleasant feelings. Or you're going to find this contact to be disagreeable, and that's where you're going to have painful feelings. But before those feelings come, there's bodily sensations that are occurring. It's like an early warning system alerting you that you're about to become discontent. So these bodily sensations for something like anger is going to be like tightening in the chest, tingling in the body, tightening in the throat, heat in the face, pressure in the skull. This is all the early warning system alerting you that you're about to get angry. And what the Buddha is teaching you is that when you notice that with your mindfulness or awareness of mind, you cut it off and let it go. You apply right effort to cut that off. You're not suppressing your feelings here. You're actually cutting it off and letting it go before it becomes a feeling, because that's protecting your mind. It's preserving your peacefulness and your joy. Whereas if like you were taking a boat from the US to the UK and you're out in the middle of the ocean, you would like to prevent the water from ever coming into the boat, because once the water comes in, you got a real problem to deal with. So once the anger comes into your mind, you've got a real problem to deal with. You've got to get rid of it. You've got to eliminate it, right? So you would like to prevent it from ever coming into the mind by cutting it off as a bodily sensation. But just understand that you're not going to always be able to do this when your mind is first starting to train. Over time, you'll develop the ability to do this every single time, but it's going to take you sometimes multiple years to get to that point. So if you miss it as a bodily sensation, cut it off as a feeling. That's the next best option. Because if you don't cut it off there, it's going to affect the condition of your mind. This is why you've been grumpy or irritable for a few hours or a few days or like a week or two, because you didn't cut it off as a bodily sensation, you didn't cut it off as a feeling, and you didn't cut it off as the condition of mind, because you didn't have this wisdom. Then it fed what's called a mental object. This is a deeply rooted container in the mind. In this example, it's ill will. All those 10 fetters that I've taught you, those are the mental objects. They're deeply rooted containers in the mind. And as long as you allow the mind to continue to experience these things, the bodily sensations, the feelings, and the condition of the mind, it's going to feed these mental objects. We didn't have ill will when we were first born. It got developed over time. We didn't go into the nursery at the hospital hating other babies, but because of our craving and our lack of wisdom, we ended up developing this anger and hatred and bitterness in the mind, and that's where this deeply rooted container of ill will came in. But if you can cut it off and put a blockade at the bodily sensations, you'll preserve your mind and protect it. The way that this looks in day-to-day life is that if you were sitting on the sofa, for example, and you were watching the news, and you notice the bodily sensations associated with the arising of anger, rather than just dwell in that and allow the mind to form the feeling, cut that off and let it go. Turn off the TV. Go for a walk. Go get a glass of water from the kitchen. Go wash your hands in the bathroom. Go for a bike ride. Go do something else. Redirect the mind somewhere else. And that's going to cut off and let go rather than allow the mind to form the conditioned feeling. So these bodily sensations is that early warning system. It's like the mind saying, I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. I'm about to get a conditioned feeling. And you're like, nope, not going to let you do that. And you cut it off and let it go. And if you do this enough, you won't get discontent feelings any longer. It just takes time to develop the mind to be able to do this. So this is the 4 foundations of mindfulness. And you would like to perfect this more and more, that you're aware of those bodily sensations, not just with the painful feelings, but also the pleasant ones and the neither painful nor pleasant as well. If you allow your mind to get so happy about that brand new job that you got, well, when you lose your job, you're going to be frustrated and angry. So when you feel that tingling across your shoulders, up the back of the neck and over your head, those warm fuzzies that people really like, you're going to need to cut that off and let it go. You need to be willing to let go of the temporary happiness in order to get to the permanent happiness, the permanent joy, where it's unconditioned. If you allow your mind to get conditional happiness, then it will never get to the unconditioned happiness. So you would like to cut off and let go of all the discontent feelings arising as a bodily sensation, realizing that you're not going to be able to do that every time, and you're going to need to refine this more and more. What's going to help you to be able to do this is right concentration. Here in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha is describing enhanced qualities of mind that you're going to experience on your way to the first stage of enlightenment. These enhanced qualities of mind are called the jhanas. This is having put together the Eightfold Path really well, you're going to experience these enhanced qualities of mind. And I teach you this at different times in the various programs that I share. In this particular class, what I share with you is how to practice right concentration. Because in the Eightfold Path, the Buddha is explaining the results of having put together the entire Eightfold Path. But if you look at his other teachings, you'll see how to practice right concentration, which he describes a daily meditation practice and practicing singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Where your daily meditation practice is going to need to consist of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. These have specific goals that are going to help you to move your mind closer and closer to enlightenment. And I teach those, and I explain to you what are the wholesome qualities you're cultivating and what are the unwholesome qualities that you're eliminating as part of breathing mindfulness meditation and loving kindness meditation. So you're going to need to build up this practice where you're meditating 2 or 3 times a day for about 30 minutes. And that can sound like a lot for some people, but if you look at your life, there's probably some unbeneficial things that you're doing that you could clear out. Maybe you're doing a lot of social media surfing or a lot of YouTube videos or things like this, that you could bring that stuff down in a moderate way, that then you would have more time to be able to do things like meditation. So you're going to need to be committed to developing a meditation practice, realizing that this can take you 6 months, a year, even 2 years to build up to this type of frequency and this type of amount of meditation. So you're going to need that meditation practice to support you in building your mindfulness and be able to cut off and let go. That's why we meditate for each class, but you're going to need to be doing this each individual day. Then you're going to need to practice singleness of mind. This is where you're doing just one thing at a time. If you've been taught to multitask, this is actually not possible. Your mind can't actually do more than one thing at a time. What your mind is actually doing is it's doing multiple tasks, one after another, after another, after another. It's like rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing. So if you're talking to your mom on the phone, you're watching TV and you're eating a sandwich, You're not actually doing all three of these things at the same time. That's why when you get off the phone, you can't remember what it was that you talked about, because your mind was rapidly cycling from thing to thing to thing to thing to thing. If you've ever gone to a racetrack where horses are racing and they're running around the racetrack, when they go to the barn, they can't calm down. They're like really amped up. They have a lot of stress and anxiety because they've been running around the track so much. So if you do this to your mind, like for all during your day while you're at work and you're doing errands and things like this, if you're just running around, when you get home, you find it very challenging to relax because you have stress and anxiety in your mind. So you're going to need to do just one thing at a time. And this is actually going to produce more benefits for you. Because if you're talking on the phone, eating a sandwich and watching TV, you're not going to be able to bring forth your full wisdom in this situation. In this conversation that could have been 15 minutes, it actually ended up being 45 minutes or an hour. And now you have to go back and clean up what you messed up here, because maybe you used some speech that was unwise. Maybe there were certain things that you agreed to that you have to get a reminder about. So you're actually spending more time having your mind run around. And then you can't rest and you can't relax. Your mind is stressed and having anxiety. So if you just do one thing at a time, then you can actually be focused and concentrated and bring forth your wisdom in all these situations. So if you're in a business meeting and your mind is wandering, thinking about a vacation that you're going to have in 3 to 6 months, you would like to cut that off and let it go. Bring your mind back to the business meeting, because that's what's going to be beneficial for you. Or if you're washing dishes and your mind is wandering, bring your mind back to the dishes. Don't allow your mind to do that, because you can easily get cut with a knife, and now you got to go to the hospital, you got to get stitches, you got to see a doctor, you can't do all the normal things that you would normally do. It's actually wasting time, right? So what you would like to do is just be focused and concentrated in each part of your day. The way that I think about this is that if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod and you were grinding this back and forth, initially that steel rod's going to bounce around a lot because there's not a groove there yet. But if you grind the steel rod back and forth enough, you're going to get a deeper and deeper groove. And when it pops out, you're going to know that and you're going to bring it right back to the groove. But if you grind this steel rod back and forth enough, eventually you're going to get a deep enough groove that steel rod will never pop out. And that's what your mind's going to experience. And it's going to bounce around quite a bit at the beginning. But if you stay focused and concentrated, every time you see your mind wandering, you keep pulling it back, eventually you're going to get more and more focus, more and more concentration, and you'll be practicing that effortlessly, where all throughout your day, your mind is focused and concentrated. So this is right concentration. And this rounds out our mental discipline section of the Eightfold Path, where we talked about right effort, applying initiative to eliminate the unwholesome aspects of the mind and cultivate wholesome qualities in the mind. Then your right mindfulness is practicing awareness of mind and more deeply understanding and practicing the 4 foundations of mindfulness, where you're aware of the bodily sensations, the feelings, the condition of the mind, and the mental objects. Then you would like to practice right concentration to develop your meditation practice and practice singleness of mind in your day-to-day life. Anytime you see your mind wandering, cut that off and bring it back and keep your mind in the middle. So let me know what questions you guys have here on this particular section of the Eightfold Path. We talked about all 3 sections today, and now we just finished up with the mental discipline section. You can put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. So it looks like either Joe or Adela has a question. Go ahead, guys.
Hi, David. This is Adela. My question is around practicing or having sympathetic joy. I find in most situations I do, but like you mentioned, there may be some, whether it's a promotion or something different, where I get feelings of envy. So what are some maybe practical things that I can do, maybe daily, weekly, however long and often, to kind of expand that feeling of sympathetic joy in my life and minimize those feelings of envy?
Yeah, so whenever you see fortunate things happening for people, just be pleased with their success. Even if it's on the news and you don't even know these people, just be like, oh, that's wonderful for them, right? So you would like to cultivate that sympathetic joy. You see something happen, like maybe you're in a store and maybe you're waiting in line and a new line opens up and somebody else gets in that line before you. It's like, oh, that's wonderful for them. Congratulations, right? That's what you're thinking in your mind. So in each situation where you see people being successful or having fortunate things happen, you would like to apply effort to bubble up that sympathetic joy more and more. And then you're going to need to go through enough situations where it's impacting you, right? Because in these situations, it can be really easy for you to be like someone wins the lottery and you're like, oh, congratulations. I'm pleased to see that person. You don't even know them. It's on the news. It's like, oh, congratulations. But then you're going to need to go through enough situations where there are certain things that you're working towards and you don't get it, for example, and somebody else does, where you can now apply right effort to bring that sympathetic joy up. Because like if that coworker came by gloating and all conceited, like, wow, I got the job, look at me, aren't I so great? It's going to be challenging for you in that situation to have sympathetic joy. But that's where you got to dig deep and apply that right effort and bring that up. And more that'll be permeating in the mind and it'll just always be there. You won't have to apply right effort.
Okay, thank you. And does it all go back to like cravings? For example, like a craving for a promotion, a craving, it all just kind of ties back to that. So eliminating those cravings in order to practice that sympathetic joy.
Exactly. That's what this whole path is working towards helping you to do, is eliminate those cravings, because I want that job, I want that title, I want that office, I want that new salary. And now when you don't get it, your mind experiences some painful feeling. And part of that is the envy and the jealousy, right? So now the way that you counteract that is bring in the sympathetic joy. By bringing in the wholesome quality, it'll help you to be able to get rid of the unwholesome.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I'm going to see if we have any other questions anywhere. Okay, I don't see any other questions anywhere. So I'm just going to end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in understanding these teachings. Next week, we're going to be in the very short chapter, which is chapter 6. It's titled The Middle Way, Walking the Middle Way. This will probably take me all of maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes to teach it to you. And then I'm going to open up to all the questions that you might have. So you've got some time here to really study the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Of course, you're interested in studying chapter 6 as well as part of the book series and reading that, but it's a very short chapter, but that gives you time to now study and implement chapter 4 and chapter 5, because that's what you would really like to be focusing on closely. But chapter 6 is going to help you to understand how to bring all of this stuff into focus where you can practice the middle way. So I'm going to be teaching you that next week. And then tomorrow, I'm going to be starting here in Chiang Mai a Foundation in the Path to Enlightenment course. So if you guys would like to learn that, you're welcome to attend that either through the recordings or the live streams as I'm doing that. That's going to be all the foundational teachings that an individual needs. It's essentially like the first 2.5 months of the group learning program put into 5 days, because we're learning 5 to 6 hours per day. And then, of course, there's on Wednesdays, the Buddhist chanting series that I'm doing, where I'm doing a 4-part series helping students to learn Buddhist chanting. So you're welcome to attend any and all of these classes that you like. And anytime you need help, you're always welcome to reach out. You can ask questions in these live classes. You can post on our Facebook group. You can send me a private message, or you can schedule personal guidance, and I'm pleased to help you. So whatever you choose to do today, have a very wonderful and lovely rest of your day. We'll see you next time. Sawadee ka.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.